I don't know about you guys, but I am sick and tired of seeing these two on almost every single team I face in Great League. I am sick and tired of seeing this dumb fish that Niantic thought they'd nerfed, but they actually buffed. And I am sick and tired of seeing whatever this thing is. So I built a team that's designed to counter Lanturn specifically. It doesn't necessarily counter Medicham directly, but I brought back Trevenant because of Medicham. I do have to put a disclaimer, this team, Dugong Double Grass, kind of doesn't make sense. It's ABA weak to quite a few things, especially Scrafty. However, if you're bored of the current meta, which I was, you can go ahead and try to use it. It's actually a pretty fun team. But I'm sure you guys came here to see some battles, not me complaining about the stale Great League meta, so let's get into the battles. This first battle, I have never seen a closer battle in my life. You guys have to watch this. I'm not going to tell you guys if I win or lose. But up first, we get a Pelipper on the lead. This is an okay matchup for Dugong. I'm going to be able to debuff him with the Icy Winds. I don't know why. It looks like I CMP tied him. I should have thrown at 5. I decided to shield because my opponent doesn't really have a reason to go for the Weather Ball bait. Also, the first Hurricane is not going to be debuffed, so the one coming after will be debuffed, so it's the better choice to shield the first one. My opponent makes an impressive catch on the second Icy Wind, however, on the Lanturn, saving the Pelipper in the back. But lucky for us, we are running Double Grass, so Lanturn is definitely no problem at all. I decided to bring in Venusaur because of what I thought he might have in the back. I thought he would have maybe Medicham in the back, and Trevenant has a much better matchup against Medicham. However, my prediction was completely wrong, and my opponent brings in the ultimate backline destroyer for this team. He has Gligar and 2 shields left. Lucky for us, I was able to farm up as much energy as possible against the Lanturn, so I'm able to throw 2 Frenzy Plants and get both of his shields. Unfortunately, he farms us down. Now I have to bring in Dugong because I don't want to take an aerial ace on my Trevenant yet, and I don't want to use my shield yet because my opponent actually has a ton of energy stored up. So my opponent would be able to reach 2 aerial aces if I had brought in Trevenant. I do bring in Dugong hoping that he would throw all of his energy on Dugong. I take a dig and an aerial ace, and then I swap into Trevenant, and I felt like my opponent was going to catch the Seed Bomb. I was being very careful. I did 2 more fast moves, and unfortunately, my opponent was able to catch on the Pelipper, and I didn't charge it, but it still wasn't enough to give me some farm to get to another Seed Bomb. So at this point, I thought I lost, right? Nope. My Dugong somehow survives 1 more wing attack, and I'm able to KO the Gligar? I thought for sure that would be a simultaneous KO or a loss for us, but we got that win, and that was probably the closest match I've ever played. Moving on to the next match. Oh boy, do I have a match for you. This is triple charm, and I only have 1 Charmancer on my team. So my opponent leads Granbull into my Dugong, and I am just going to try to debuff him as soon as possible. Unfortunately, again, my opponent makes a catch, this time on Alolan Ninetales, so it's going to be resisted. Because my opponent is running Charm, I am going to swap into Venusaur. It actually clicked here that this might be a triple Charm team, so I'm going to have to try to preserve my Venusaur as much as possible. I CMP tie on the Weather Ball with the Frenzy Plant. Luckily, my opponent doesn't shield. Then he brings back in Granbull, reaches a crunch, and of course I'm going to shield. I need to save my Venusaur, and I need to reach 2 Frenzy Plants to take both of his shields. I take the first shield. Unfortunately, we do get the debuff on the crunch, so my opponent is going to be chunking Venusaur. Luckily, we make it just in time to another Frenzy Plant, but my opponent doesn't shield that one, so he still has 1 shield left. I'm going to bring in Dugong and try to debuff him, that way the charms don't hurt as much when I bring in Trevenant. Now this is really tricky because I'm going to be doing no fast move damage at all. Wigglytuff is a normal type and will resist the ghost fast move damage from Trevenant. I have to reach 2 Seed Bombs and hope that my opponent doesn't reach 2 Disarming Voices before I can reach the 2 Seed Bombs. So the first Seed Bomb is going to take his last shield, and then the second one should be enough to KO Wigglytuff. And lucky for us, it gets super close. We actually CMP tie on this charged move, and we're able to take that win. GG's to my opponent, and best of luck running that triple charm team. I don't blame you for wanting to run that. Medicham is absolutely everywhere. But on to the next match, we have an Umbreon lead into our Dugong. Now, even though we're running ABB, and usually in an ABB lineup, what you want to do is you want to swap into one of your back Pokemon to draw out the counter for your backline. So in this case, I would have to swap in one of my grass types to draw out either a fire type or a flyer. In this situation, I have to stay in because I absolutely cannot have Umbreon line up with Trevenant. What I'm gonna do is I'm not gonna invest any shields into Dugong. My backline actually does really well against whatever could be in the back with shields up. Unless my opponent has flyers in the back, I should be in a good position. So I'm just going for these Icy Winds, gonna debuff my opponent as much as possible, and it looks like in the 0 shield scenario, Dugong easily wins this. So this foul play is not going to be enough to KO us from this range because of how much my opponent has been debuffed. I'm gonna be able to reach the next Icy Wind. This should take him out, and my opponent, whatever he brings in, is not going to be able to farm too much on Dugong. They bring in Cresselia and Psycho cut us down, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring in Venusaur, not Trevenant, even though Trevenant is going to be doing super effective to Cresselia. I bring in Venusaur because I'm expecting them to be running Moonblast and Grass Knot, which are both resisted by Venusaur. My opponent throws a Moonblast and then swaps into Superior. Luckily, we have some energy, that way we could reach 2 Sludge Bombs and take both of my opponent's final shields. Unfortunately, they are going to be taking our shields too, but if I can get both shields out of the way, then Trevenant should be able to take care of the Cresselia pretty easily. So I'm just going straight for these Sludge Bombs, and because I am ahead by a little bit of energy, I'm going to be able to reach a third one, whereas if I hadn't been ahead by some energy, my opponent would have been able to outpace us to 3 aerial aces. The third Sludge Bomb KOs, and I immediately bring in Trevenant. As soon as my opponent sees Trevenant, they know it's over and they back out, so GG's to my opponent. Moving on to the next match. We see a Sableye on the lead. Of course, I have to stay in this matchup. I'm just going to go straight for Icy Wind. I'm actually not going to shield the first foul play. I would like to save some shields for my backline. Again, my backline is going to be squishier than what I have in the front. Going straight for these Icy Winds, and in the 0 shields, I should actually win this. But my opponent here decides to shield my second Icy Wind, and then they bring in Charizard, and I'm thinking, uh-oh, I don't really have anything for this. But I'm just going to shield the Dragon Claw because I reached the Icy Wind. I'm expecting to get a shield out of him here. I do, and then I bring in Venusaur just so that I could reach that Sludge Bomb. I could have brought in Trevenant as well. It wouldn't have made a difference, but I do reach the Sludge Bomb. It's enough to KO, thankfully. And I get the Charizard out of the way, and I think, okay, this is the biggest hard counter to me, but nope. Unfortunately, my opponent has a Drapion in the back, so this is going to be GG's for us. We cannot win this. And this team weirdly hard counters my team like really, really badly. Like there's nothing on this team that, you know, I could put Trevenant up against. I do go for a catch on Dugong against this Drapion, but unfortunately we got RPS'd and we lose that. Moving on to the next match. On the lead, we're going to see a Mandibuzz into our Dugong. This is a very good lead for us, but also we have to be very careful to win whatever swap in my opponent decides to bring in. It's going to be Registeel, and I can easily bring in Trevenant into this. Trevenant is going to resist everything from Registeel. However, the Zap Cannons are going to hurt, and I can't take a second one. I can take the first one, but I can't take another one. Fortunately for us, the first Zap Cannon does not debuff our attack, so I'm able to go for the Seed Bomb for the second charged move, and I'm able to take him out with the consecutive Shadow Claws. Unfortunately for us, my Trevenant is still quite healthy, and my opponent is going to be able to farm us down completely, having a ton of energy on Mandibuzz. Now I am going to bring back in Dugong, and I'm actually okay with taking charged moves from Mandibuzz on Dugong, but my opponent immediately swaps into Medicham, and I immediately bring in Venusaur. Now I'm in a situation where I have to reach 3 Frenzy Plants. I need 2 to take out both his shields, and then 1 to hopefully be enough to KO the Medicham. So I'm just going to shield the first Ice Punch, but I recognize that he does have somewhat of a win condition if I don't call the second Ice Punch, because he could reach a Psychic and then KO me. 1 Ice Punch will not be enough to KO Venusaur. I no-shield the second Ice Punch, and I am able to reach that third Frenzy Plant, taking out Medicham, and then my opponent surrenders, seeing that I still have a pretty healthy Dugong in the back. GG's to my opponent. Moving on to the next match. My team is very obviously ABA weak to something, and it's going to be Scrafty. Unfortunately, I swap in Venusaur and I just pray. And because I'm ahead by a little bit of energy, I can actually win this versus Froslass, and because my opponent no shields, I can shield safely and farm him down completely. This was our 1 win condition, and now I'm going to have a ton of energy for whatever my opponent brings in next. My opponent comes back in with Scrafty. That means whatever they have in the back is going to be very weak to grass types, and hopefully my Trevenant should be able to handle it. My first Frenzy Plant goes unshielded, and then the second one is going to grab his first shield. And now my opponent is pretty low where I can bring in Dewgong and farm down the Scrafty, but my opponent makes an immediate swap into Jellicent. Now I am a little bit slow on the swap back into Trevenant, so this is going to get very close because my opponent would be able to reach a second Shadow Ball, but lucky for us, we CMP tie. I'm able to reach that Seed Bomb, and now my opponent has a full health Dewgong to deal with in the back, and they recognize that they can't win that, and they surrender. GG's to my opponent. That was a pretty tough match, actually. But on to the final match of the set, we do have a Sableye lead. Really interesting how many Dark-type leads we saw with this team, because I have Trevenant in the back, you know, algorithm, maybe? Anyways, again, we're going to stay in with Dewgong, and if this is a zero shield scenario, then I am going to be able to win this. I am not going to shield any of my opponent's foul plays. I should be able to survive this pretty easily because my opponent has been debuffed at this point, and my opponent can win lead if they shield this next Icy Wind, but they decide not to. They decide to let it go, and then my opponent brings in Medicham, and I immediately swap Venusaur. Now my opponent is going to go straight for the Ice Punch. They didn't build up to the Psychic, so I can easily no-shield that. And luckily, I no-shielded there because my opponent has Gligar in the back, and I absolutely hate to see Gligar in the back with this team. Now I'm easily able to reach 2 Frenzy Plants. The first one grabs one of his shields, and then he doesn't shield the second one, so he is in a range where I can possibly farm him down with Trevenant. I still have 2 shields left, so I am going to go ahead and 2-shield Trevenant because Medicham's moves are actually going to be doing a lot less damage to me. My opponent realizes that he is in a range where I can farm him down, and he immediately swaps back into Medicham. I go for the Seed Bomb bait, it takes his final shield, and then we CMP tie on the Shadow Ball. I'm able to take out this Medicham. My opponent realizes that he can't get to another Aerial Ace, and he surrenders there, and we take that final win. GG's there, we managed to get a 4-1 in that set. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I hope you guys found it informative. If you guys like my videos, please consider subscribing. Feel free to comment down below what Pokemon you guys would like to see me use next. If I have it, I may consider using it. And if you guys leave a like on my videos, it helps me out a ton. And I will see you guys in the next video. Bye bye!